Evening.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, Rex.
Hey, hi.
Welcome to draft.
Hi, Alan. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Oh, yeah, he's good. Okay. I've been doing some scanning and I came across these. They have a single perforation at the bottom between each frame. Is that the 110? I can't, it doesn't have a code listed on it.
Are the negatives about the size of your thumbnail?
Well, there is, no, it's a standard, it's almost a standard 35 millimeter,
It might be like the 128.
maybe
It's still,
128.
it looks like something came out of a cartridge.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, like a
Yeah.
110, the old 110
And 110 was really small.
Instamatic, single perf along the bottom,
36.
none across the top. And also, if you look at a regular, you have to go to fresh to get, you see the color base is different. See, this is a standard Kodacolor 2 C41 process color, and then this one is whatever it is, and there's no type registration along the bottom. So I don't think it'll be difficult to, I just came to these, so these are what I'm going to be working on. These are easy because the computer can figure it out really quick. It's listed. The ViewScan software has just about everything. Put that back away. Has about everything that you can ask for in film types. 5043, 5035. 5035 is the number that you see along the side of Kodacolor 2. Then there's, I'm forgetting what the other numbers were. There's a 5045 and a 5043. 5043 was another one that I could not find, but and I'm looking on a list that has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, but that was not on the list. So I just have to guess at it. When I go to do color balancing, I just guess at it. And there is a place where you can set up for your transparency, color negative, generic. So it's called generic. So you click on generic and you get what you get. And that's fun. Then after that, these are next. I'm gonna have some real fun. You like these, Dennis? Got some black and whites.
Yeah.
Some real stuff.
Ah, see, I knew that would bring her out. Hi. I bet.
Hey, Rex.
Oh, that's pretty. Archie.
Hello, Rex.
Hi.
Doing okay?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm having a bout with my arthritis. Just to have to keep moving, believe it or not. The solution is to keep moving.
Yeah.
Don't sit too long in one spot. If I sit too long in one spot, it's hell to get up. But if like when I'm working on the
Computer.
scanner takes a while to scan a set of negatives or slides, whichever.
How many can you do at one time?
I found it best to do one at a time. It saves me a lot of work doing one at a time. With slides that were of about the same exposure on the same run, I can do that. But with negatives, I'm doing them one at a time. But the idea is that it takes enough time because it does the dust cleaning and sharpening on the second go round. It makes the pass. Well, the first pass is the entire holder with everything that's in the holder. Then the next pass is what you pick out to shoot. That's another reason that I prefer doing it custom individually, because a lot of them I don't need. I just need a sample of what it is. Like I had one of a kids program, a kids show that they were on stage, and it's from years and years and years ago. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep a sample of that. I don't need it all, just a sample. That otherwise I would have had to allow all of them to load in and then start deleting what I didn't want. I've been giving this machine a real workout. It's doing good. So, and if anybody knows about it, yeah, Beth, do you know what that is? Do you know what that is? See, with a single.
You know,
curve?
I have some that I think are probably like it, but I'm not entirely sure.
It
Because
has,
I'm not the only one in my family that's used a bunch of different cameras.
yeah. And it
I
has
had an Instamatic.
mhm.
It kind of looks like the Instamatic stuff.
Yeah, and it has
Yeah.
this.
But
Hey, Rex.
Yeah.
I just dropped a link in the chat. Take a look
Okay.
at that. This has a picture of 126 film. This is just
Oh.
go to the page and scroll down a little bit. So
Okay.
that's. I'm having trouble seeing it over Zoom.
Oh no, I got it fine. Yeah. What it needs to do. Oh yeah, that's what. Well, let me see. Let me see. That is the base is a little purple. Is orange. It's more orange like the Coda color emulsion. But in every other respect, it's exactly like it.
No, that at least gets you the film size there. Won't give you the film stock, but they'll give you the film size.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go up a link. to their main page, they have a whole bunch of different film stocks listed, or
Oh, yeah.
different film types.
Up at the top,
Let's see, home film
film
formats.
index.
If you hit
Film
film
format.
formats,
Yeah,
Where is formats?
from 1900 on. Holy shit!
Okay.
I'll just drop the link in.
Oh, okay. That's the next one. Whoop. Oh yeah, got it. That's their code numbers are 1899 to 1984. 126. Yeah, 110 is even smaller, it looks like. 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah, so this
basically
is-
half frame.
Yeah, this is the one. See, this is almost a square frame.
Yeah.
It's almost one, or is a square frame.
Pretty close.
Mhm. Hey, thanks for that.
Oh, no problem.
I marked that done, and I'll mark the other one done.
Yeah, 126 was used in Instamatics.
Yep.
Mhm.
So that's why I have some, because that's what I started on.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister used the Instamatics a lot. I remember when my mom got a 110 Instamatic, and that didn't last for very long, so I ended up stealing it.
My mother just gave me a bunch of pictures from my Instamatic from 1975.
Oh,
She had them in a photo cube. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
She finally broke the photo cube apart and gave me my pictures back. They're a little faded, but the memories are there.
Yeah.
I have a Bell and Howell slide cube. Remember the cube slide projector they had? You get these little cartridges, stack them up. I just found a bunch of those from 1978, 80.
Well, guys, it's about 10 minutes after, so I guess everyone that's going to join is probably here by now. So, how's everybody doing this evening?
But
Great.
All right.
there you are.
Wonderful.
There it is. Okay.
All right. A few things I want to address first is, first off, I apologize for the cancellation of the meeting last week. I was suffering from a migraine headache throughout the whole day and was lucky to be able to get up and actually do the cancellation, let alone actually take care of the meeting. So again, I apologize for that. And if it inconvenienced any of you, I am sorry. Second thing I want to address along with that was there was some mention of having a co-host or someone that can run the meeting in a case that I can't be here, and that is a good idea, but not possible, because to have a co-host, the host has to start the meeting anyhow. So if I can't be here, I can't start the meeting. And the way the Zoom is set up, the co-host is, you can have a co-host, but the co-host is capable of admitting people into the meeting and muting and running the meeting, but the meeting has to have been started already. It's the only true way to have a second, or someone actually be a co-host or to host a meeting would be to have them be able to host their own meeting. The reason we're allowed to have meetings that are beyond an hour long is because I pay for Zoom. And I don't charge the club because I use it for more than just here. I use my Zoom account for multiple things that I do and different things that I belong to. So The club doesn't pay for my account. My account is paid for by me, and it allows us to do the longer meetings. And giving away a password to my account's not an option because I don't want, not that I don't trust anybody, but I don't want anyone in my other stuff for my other meetings. So that being said, again, I apologize for canceling last week. Try not to do that. And as y'all know, I worked very hard to not cancel meetings and to be available and take time off of work and leave work early and all that kind of stuff to be here. But on occasion, it ain't gonna happen. And sorry.
Can I bring up something to go along with that?
Yes.
We have the Wednesday night meetings going on, and why don't we sort of cancel those out, because we've already got 3 meetings a month going on. That would
Well, I
free
think
up a little bit.
I think that the Wednesday night meetings are well liked, so I don't want to just cancel them. I have no intentions of canceling any of the meetings, but I want everyone to understand that from time to time I can't make it, or something's going to come up and I can't run the meeting. And as you know, if it's been a regular meeting or one of the regular SWIG meetings, I've started the meeting and had someone else take over at that point. And
Well,
just
what I was saying is, when it comes to the SWIG meeting, we have a Wednesday night meeting, then the next day we have a Thursday night meeting. Then on our WPS Mother Club meeting, we have one on Monday night, and then we have a couple of days later one on Wednesday. And I'm thinking the other meetings would be great, to have Wednesday night. But do we need 2 meetings a week? Might lighten a little load off of your shoulders by doing that.
Well, a load on my shoulders isn't the issue. The issue is that people were upset that I had to cancel a meeting, and I'm addressing that situation. I don't have issues on 90% of the time. I have no issue on a Wednesday night because I am off on Wednesdays, so I can do stuff throughout the day, and I have my Wednesday evenings with no issues at all.
Okay.
Our Monday night meeting and our Thursday night meetings, I take off of work to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I leave work early. I get special permission from my bosses to do that so that we can have those meetings as we've always had. So
Yeah, those are important. Yes.
Hey, Brian, I think you do a fantastic job being available and running these meetings and setting things up. And if you need to cancel once in a while because life got in the way, not a problem.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I want to thank you for all your dedication, and behind that, when you got to cancel it, just the way it is, not a problem.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with.
Same here.
I think we all agree with that, Brian.
Yeah, yes,
well,
completely understand.
Yeah,
all right.
I
So
agree.
with that being said, we're going to move on. We got a picnic coming up, which is scheduled for, I believe, Saturday, correct?
Yes.
All right. Marty, I got the newsletter, and I also have that part that you were missing. I'm going to add that in and get that sent out this evening, so I appreciate that. Mark sent me the newsletter a few days ago. I had to finish something up, and I'll be sending the newsletter out after the meeting this evening.
Can you do it since it's in a PDF, or do I need to send you the original file?
No, it doesn't matter to me. I can add to it. It doesn't matter. So we're okay. So anyhow, we have a picnic coming up on Saturday. We need to, I don't know that we've ever set a time for that, have we? Does anybody know?
No, I didn't hear a time. That's why it wasn't in there.
All right, what time do you guys want to start that picnic on Saturday?
We have the pavilion for the whole day.
We do have the pavilion for the whole day, yes.
I just assumed it was going to be like we always do. Whenever you get there, that's when we do it.
Yeah, but we got to kind of get an idea of when to tell people to start showing up, so. Any suggestions, any comments?
11 o'clock is what we usually say.
11 o'clock, good? Everyone okay with that? And those of you that are coming?
11,
Okay, 11 o'clock it is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't make it on Saturday, but
And it's bring your own food.
It is a bring your own food. We've decided that rather than having someone or having a bunch of people going through the food and getting stuff, it's bring what you want to eat, have your own little picnic thing, and we'll do our best to keep everyone safe as we can and all that kind of stuff. I will bring charcoal for the grill. There is a grill there, so I'll have charcoal available, and I'll probably cook my own food there. So if anyone wants to bring stuff and cook on the grill, you're welcome to do that as well. Any questions about the picnic?
No, but I am excited. I can bring my new toy.
What new toy do you have?
Oh, wow.
Think it's big enough, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Killer. Killer lens.
You're gonna take pictures of sparrows on the other side of the lake?
Yeah. I'm excited.
What lens is that? Lori?
It's a Tamron 150 to 600 G.
Ouch. 600.
Yep.
Very nice. All right. So as always with the picnics, if you're coming, bring your camera and stuff like that. We'll be taking some pictures and stuff like that. And I think, if I remember correctly, Jim was going to come up with a kind of a scavenger hunt type thing for the picnic as well. Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
He's not on here.
So that'll be fun. And as far as that goes, I think that's about all we have to say about the picnic. Newsletter will come out tonight. As soon as this meeting's over, I'll finish up what I have to do and send it out. And we'll go from there.
update that 11 o'clock and send you the new one if you want, or do you just want to add the 11 o'clock on there?
It's entirely up to you. If you want to do that and send it, it'll take me a few minutes to add my stuff to it, and then I can send it out at the end of the night. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so Photoshop is, I guess, what we're going to be talking about. Tonight, I got a couple videos I want to show you as well.
My hand is up and waving. May I have the floor, please?
I'm sorry, I can't see your hand. All I see is your dog with a mask on it.
Her paw is up and waving. I got a message from Annie. She's not going to make it tonight, but she says Michael has a terrific sale going on. If a custom frame, it is 60% off, plus another 25% off. And they do all of the framing and making the frame and mount it for you. They also have that buy one, get one free frames, which I usually get a hold of because I use those frames for the galleries. So she said, make sure to tell y'all.
All right. Nothing like Annie to give a shameless plug for her job, huh?
Yeah. She says you save a lot of money.
That does sound like a good deal, though. So anyone getting anything framed, keep that in mind. And I do believe we have a show coming up before too long, so we should be starting to thinking about getting some things framed up too, right?
Yes.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to say or mention before we get moving along?
I won't be able to make it through the whole, and I'm sure you're happy about this, through the whole meeting.
I put a link on Reddit to a webinar on the life of Ansel Adams by Becky Senf, who runs the Creative Center for Photography at the University of Arizona. And I've seen one version of it, and it's an interesting hour where she's researched the life of Ansel. And I thought a little bit different perspective, so you want to have a look.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Dennis. Anything else? Anybody? Sorry, it's my phone going off. All right. So anyhow, I got a couple of videos, two of which Margie sent me. We had talked about the pen tool in Photoshop. And one of these talks about using the pen tool for masking And then the other one talks about using the pen tool on
Selections.
selections. And somehow I ended up with two of the same videos opened up. So let me go find one real quick here. I gotta find the other one. Give me just a moment, guys.
The pen tool.
And obviously I've opened it up now 3 times, the same one. All right.
The pen tool. Oh, welcome to 2-minute.
Okay.
Is a really powerful tool for.
I'm not sure what's going on. When I click from one video to the next, it keeps showing me the same video over and over again. So we'll see what happens. All right, so we're going to start with using the pen tool for masking. I'm going to show you that video, and then I'm going to show you the other video, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let me figure out how to share my screen again. That one, share computer sound. Do you all see a coffee cup?
Yep.
Okay. Well, so far so good. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna play this video for you, and then we'll go on to the other ones. Okay.
Isolating. It's not its only purpose or even its primary purpose necessarily, but it's an awesome tool for getting fine edges, very smooth curves, and very intricate isolations. So I'm going to use that for our purposes today, and I'll show you why. Because this white coffee cup on a white background with a little bit of a shadow poses all kinds of problems to other selection tools. If I try selecting this white background with the magic wand, I'm going to end up selecting some of the cup inadvertently. So that's not what I want. I want really clean edges and smooth sides around the saucer, and I do not want the shadow underneath. And the isolation tools such as Quick Select or the magic wand will easily select, as you'll notice, inside the object, and then they're also adding the shadow. Sitting around and trying to tweak this and get it to look right with these tools is going to leave me with some jagged edges, and it's probably going to take me a long time. So I'll show you a much faster, much cleaner way to isolate this cup using the pen tool. We're going to go grab the pen tool, which is P on the shortcut menu. And you want to make sure in this drop down that you have path selected. You can do some awesome things with the shape tool. You can make different shapes, strokes, lines, and all kinds of things. But for our purposes today, we're isolating and we need the path tool. So I have it as path, and then you'll notice these are grayed out for the moment. Those we don't need. Right here I have exclude overlapping shapes. And the alignment by default is to selection. That's fine. We're going to leave that there. This right here will allow you to bring shapes forward, backward, to the front or back if you have multiple shapes, which we don't, so that's something we don't need. Right here you have a checkbox for rubber band, which for our purposes we're going to leave off today, and I'll explain that later. And auto add delete is fine. We do want that on, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. So now that we have our pen tool active, we're ready to start the isolation. I'm just going to grab a corner here of where the saucer meets the cup, and you'll notice that when I click, I created a little point. This little point is the beginning of my path, and in order to have a full path, I'm going to have to come back to it and close that point. So I'm going to go further on down the saucer, zoom out a little bit, and click and drag here. Now I didn't let off my click. I'm still holding down on my left click. When I click and drag, you'll notice I have these curve tools that help me create a curve with my path. And these handles can be adjusted in many different ways. I'll show you more about that in a second. For right now, I just want to drag it until it gets the curve of the saucer just about right. I'll let go, and I have a start to my path. I'm going to go further down and click again. Now I am holding down the click. I don't let up on it, and that allows me to drag out more handlebars to control this path. You'll notice the path has inherited a curve from the previous point I created, and that's really important. If I were to have created that path closer, you'll notice that it inherited a curve from this handle, and that doesn't look quite right because the end point of the handle is further out than the new point I created, and it makes a bit of a lump. So I'm going to go far away over here, and it'll inherit that curve, which is perfect. And I'm going to keep this path moving. So I'm going to go to a nice point over here that's a good distance away, pull it out again. Now at this point I'm a little concerned that I'm creating too big of a curve to go into that handle. So without releasing my click, I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key on a Mac, and I'm going to pull the handle back towards my point. You'll notice that it isn't affecting the other handle at the moment. When you hold down on the Alt or Option key, you can adjust one handle independently, and that's really useful when you're creating paths. Alright, I'm going to let up that click and create a new point here. We have a little glare to the edge of the saucer, which I'm trying to get, which my Quick Select and my Magic Wand would surely have missed. Now that I've drug out this last point, still holding the click, I'm going to push Alt or Option again, and I'm going to pull the handle around the direction of the new angle. This is really important. I can pull it while I have Option and my click held down, and I can redirect so that this point causes an intersection here that will go around the handle. Alright, now I'll click here, and I'm going to pull out some more. Again, holding Alt or Option, pull my handlebar back in, and then click into this corner. Now, I really want a curve going upwards, so I'm still holding this click. You'll notice though I'm not pulling out a handlebar yet. I will though. I'm going to hold Alt and Option, pull that up, and then click here. You'll notice the reason I did that is because I inherited a bit of a curve from that last handlebar, and it gives me a nice smooth transition. Now I'm about to close the path. This is really important, especially if you're going to fill the path or make a selection, which is what we're going to do. I'm going to click on my original point, and you'll notice I have a circle out by my pen tool to indicate that I'm about to close the path. Click that, and then drag my angles the way I want them and get the handlebars to where I have the selection just right. That's a good start to the outside of the cup, and now I'm going to show you why that we want to auto add delete and we want to exclude overlapping shapes. Is because we need to get rid of this part of the inside of the handle. So using the same techniques, I'm going to click here, click and drag some handles out, and just quickly isolate this. The pen tool is a little awkward, but you'll get used to it with some practice, and it's super useful for isolating shapes like this. Alright, now I have a really nice smooth isolation. How do I turn that into a mask? I'm glad you asked. Alright, we're going to go over to the Path tab, and under Paths, it's created a default work path. You can rename that if you want. Call it Coffee Cup. And that just means that when you create your next path, if you wanted another one, you could tell what they were by the names. So down here at the bottom, I have several options. I have fill path, stroke path, and what I want is load path as selection. When I click that, it now turns my path into the little marching ants selection, and I can isolate from that. So I'll go back to my layers, and what I do is create a layer mask. Now at this point you can copy it, paste it, you can delete it out, but I'm going to add a layer mask because that's non-destructive and it's really simple. So I'll just click down here at the bottom, add layer mask, and there we go. I have my coffee cup with smooth edges isolated against a transparent background. Hope that helps.
Okay, guys, what do you think of that?
I like it. I like it a lot. Got a few things to remember. Probably have to play the recording back a couple times.
I have a feeling you changing that curve isn't as easy as it looks like on that video. So that's going to take some skill.
It's going to take some practice.
Yeah, it's going to take some practice, but it actually was something I wasn't even aware of that the pen tool could do. So just being made aware of the fact that it can do it is helpful in the future, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Amen to that.
All right, so let's take a look at this other video. And this is using the pen tool to highlight a road on a map. I believe Margie had mentioned that she does this and uses the pen tool for that.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at that and just get an idea what that is all about.
Design, I'm Dage, and today we're gonna highlight a road on a map in Photoshop.
He seemed very excited.
I have exported this high-resolution map as a JPEG from Google Earth Pro. If you don't know how to do that, go ahead and Google it. I'm not gonna create a 2-minute Google Earth Pro channel just for that. So I'll drag this map and drop it into Photoshop to open it. Now I think it's too dark and desaturated, so let's fix that. In the Layers panel, click this button to add an adjustment layer, choose Levels, and then in the Properties panel, drag the white input slider to the left. Let's add another adjustment layer, and this time we'll choose Vibrance. In the Properties panel, increase the Vibrance slider to around 90. It all depends on the photo you're working on, so we may need to adjust these values accordingly. Great, now let's draw a line that follows this road here. So activate the pen tool from the tools panel, and up here in the options bar, make sure shape is selected from this drop down menu, set the fill color to none, set the stroke color to red, open this drop down menu and set the alignment to center, and finally you can adjust the stroke width or thickness. I will set it to 15 pixels because it will work well with my image size. I will click outside the map, move the cursor, and then click and drag to create a curve. Move the cursor, click and drag to create another curve, move the cursor, click and drag, and finally click once to set the endpoint. You can hold down Alt if you're on Windows or Option if you're on a Mac to move these handles and adjust the curve. Cool. Now let's add a small circle here. Click and hold on the Shape tools and activate the Ellipse tool. In the Options bar, make sure New Layer is selected here. Now click and drag to create the circle, and do that while holding down the Shift key in order to create a perfect circle. Up here in the Options bar, let's set the fill color to red, the stroke color to white, and you can decrease the stroke width a little bit. With the Move tool, you can adjust the position of the circle. Let's add a small caption. Click and hold on the Ellipse tool and activate the Rectangle tool. Create a rectangle here, and it will have the same fill and stroke colors as the circle. Finally, activate the Horizontal Type tool. Click once and type Hotel. You might need to adjust the font size here on the Options bar. And let's move our text with the Move tool and align it correctly with the rectangle. Now that I know where the hotel is, I'm going there. Bye-bye!
I'm in Amsterdam, which is without...
He was very excited. Another way of using the pen tool, and probably something that I could have used over the years whenever I give you guys directions to different places we're going, and I try to draw on the map myself, which usually doesn't work out too well. So maybe I'll try that technique next time.
I'm not sure what he did different with the pen tool so that the other guy did was selecting. What did I miss there? Was there something he picked in the menus on the top menu bar?
Shape.
Shape instead of path.
He chose shape. Instead of path, he chose shape.
Oh, he had shape. Okay, the other guy had path. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I missed that.
All right. Okay.
Well, I guess I would think that would be more path, right? That was a path he was tracing, so maybe I got confused.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Margie, thank you for submitting those videos.
You're welcome.
That goes for anybody, everybody. If you come across a video that you think is pretty cool and we should see that has to do with what we're talking about, feel free to send that over to me and we'll show it to everybody, because it's helpful to have some little tips like that, because I don't think there's anyone here that knows everything that these programs will do. So together we can learn a lot. So anyhow. All right, so moving on, I have another video I want to show you guys. And this is a beginner's guide to layers. So the next step in Photoshop, and I think one of the most important steps in Photoshop, is understanding what layers do. We went through most of all the tools that photographers typically use. We went through some that photographers don't typically use, and there's a few more in there. But I'm thinking along the lines of the next step is getting a photograph and doing some work to it. Now, Photoshop is a destructive editing tool unless you use layers. So if you don't use layers, everything you do is destructive to the photo. So layers, I believe, is one of the most important things that we could use in Photoshop. So I'm going to show you this video. This is the beginning of layers. And then we'll move on to actually going into Photoshop and fooling around. I'll show you some of these different adjustment layers is where we're going to start at tonight. Okay.
And how layer masks worked with layers just added to the confusion. And I really didn't understand what layers did in Photoshop, why they were necessary, and what you could do with them. So in this video, I'm going to give you the very basics of layers to hopefully give you a better understanding of what they're used for in Photoshop along with the layer masks. Now I have this image here. This is actually a really old image of my youngest son, Joe. He's an adult now, but as you can see, he's in the park sitting in the middle of this bench. I also have another image. It's my son Joe sitting on that same bench, but he's on the far left-hand side of the bench. So we just have single layers in both of these tabs, and I want to put them together. So we're going to have two layers in one tab. So I'm going to go to this image, and I'm going to use the Move tool. The keyboard shortcut for the Move tool is the V key. V is in victory, and it's the top tool over here in the tool well. So we're just going to click on this layer, hold the left mouse button, and then drag it up to that first tab, and then hold it over that image. And I'm going to hold the Shift key down while I let go of the left mouse button. That will drop it right in the middle, so it's perfectly lined up. Now you could see when I did that, that layer that I just dragged over there totally obscured the layer below it. If we look over in the Layers panel, you can see we have that as layer 1. Layer 1 is the layer we dragged over. It's over here in the second tab. I dragged it over there, and it's totally covering up layer 0. I'll turn layer 1 off, and you could see that layer 0 is there. Now if I turn layer 1 back on, this is where masking comes in. You could use masks to have parts of other layers come through. So down here below the layer panel at the very bottom, you'll see a little rectangle with a circle in the middle. That's to add a mask. So we're going to add a mask to layer 0. I'm going to click on it, and by default it will add a white mask. Now if you watched any videos of Photoshop training, You might have heard the teacher say, white reveals, black conceals. What that person is talking about is the mask. We have a white mask here. Now, white reveals. What it means is it's allowing this top layer, the layer that it is associated with, to be revealed. So basically it did nothing in this case. We just added the mask, but nothing has changed. It's just allowing that top layer to be revealed. I could turn off the layer and still see the layer below it, but still we haven't done anything. Now, the second part of that little saying is black conceals. So that's implying if we put black on this layer mask, it will conceal this top layer. So a quick way to put black onto that mask, there's a lot of different ways to do it. We could invert it, we could go up to the menu and do things. But one way is to use a keyboard shortcut that will add this bottom swatch. You can see we have swatches here. The top is white, the bottom is black. If I want to add that bottom color to this layer, what I could do is use the keyboard shortcut of holding in the Control or Command key, and it's Control if you have a PC, Command if you have a Mac, and hitting the Delete key. And when I do that, it fills that layer with black. And you can see as soon as I did that, it conceals the layer that it's associated with. So now, if I turn it off and on, you can see nothing's happening because it's totally blocking out that layer, allowing layer 0 to show. So very basic, some masks. White reveals, black conceals. So we're concealing that top layer. Well, there's more to it than that. Let's say I want to fill this with something other than white or black. Let's go up to Edit, down to Fill, and you can see that we have a fill dialog and there's 50% gray in this drop-down. Let's fill it with 50% gray and see what happens. So I'll click OK. Now you can see part of one layer is coming through while the other part of the other layer is showing through. So shades of gray will vary the amount of opacity of the actual mask. So now, being 50% gray, we have exactly half of one layer showing through and exactly half of the other layer showing through. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go over here in the tool well, and I'm going to get the burn tool. The burn tool will darken something. So every brush stroke will make something a little bit darker. And now there's 3 different things we could click on in the layers panel. We could click on layer 0, we could click on layer 1, or we could click on the mask for layer 1. So make sure you're clicked on the mask for layer 1. I have the burn tool, so I'm going to make some of that gray a darker gray by using the burn tool. So I'm going to paint right here. And when I paint right there, you can see I'm making that bottom layer, layer 0, come in a little bit stronger. So we'll bring in that. All right. Now, next to that burn tool in that same little cubby in the tool well over here, we have the dodge tool. The dodge tool will make something lighter. So we're still clicked on that layer mask that is gray with a little bit of a different shade of gray in the middle. I'm going to paint this now, the dodge tool on the left hand side. Now it's making this image, or part of his head at least, come through a little better. Now what exactly did we do? Let's take a look at that mask. I'm going to hold the Alt Option key, and it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and click right on the mask. And now it's showing the mask. So you can see we have 50% gray almost everywhere. So that's allowing half a layer 0 to come through and half a layer 1 to show. But in the middle, I burned it so it's darker gray. It's actually black in parts. So now that it's black, it's allowing all of layer 0 to show through. This is the bottom layer because it's black conceals. It's concealing the layer it's associated with. Then over here, I dodged this part, so I made it lighter gray. As a matter of fact, I dodged it so much I made it white. So that reveals that reveals the layer it's associated with. So it's allowing all of layer 1 to show right where I painted. And that's why we got that effect. Now I'll hold that Alt Option key in again and click on the layer mask again, and we're back to what we see. So again, I could just turn that off and you can see we're right back, because turning that off turns off not only layer 1, but it turns off the mask for layer 1. So it's allowing all of layer 0 to come through. So that's really just the very basics of layers. There's so much more you could do with it. As a matter of fact, I have a video where I use the 2 images we used in this video and a third image of my son sitting on the far right side of the bench. And what we did in that video is I demonstrated how you could create one image with my son sitting in all 3 places on the bench. I'll have a link to that video in the description below this video, and I'll also have a little flag pop up in the top right hand corner of this video with a link to that video. Watch that video to learn how to do that with layers and layer masks, and you could download the images for free to practice on your own. So check out that video. I hope this video helps you just get an idea of the very, very basics of layers and layer masks, because really that is the foundation you need to really understand Photoshop. You need to understand layers and layer masks, and hopefully this will help you to that end. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do.
Okay, guys, so that's a very, very basic idea of what layers and layer masks do. Questions?
It's a good demo.
Sorry, what was that, Dennis? I didn't hear you.
I said it was a good demo.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought so. All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments on that, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. You guys should see my Photoshop at this point. Okay. So we're going to talk about the basics of adjustment layers, because adjusting a photograph is one of the things you got to do before you start getting into all the fancy stuff of combining and all that kind of stuff that we show from time to time in our demos and all that. So this is a picture I took with my iPhone up at Erie when Annie and I was up there. And so it's a JPEG where it's not a huge file, but it's not bad as far as size-wise goes, so we can do a little bit to it. So when you adjust a picture, there's a couple ways of doing it. You can do what I would consider a destructive way of doing it. So if I just brought up like levels, which would be a Control Command and L, which I think, let me activate Photoshop here. So if I brought up levels like that and made adjustments to my picture, and I did that, and then I brought something else up and did that, and then I brought something else up and did that. So let's say we did a adjustment of, let's say, hue and saturation, and we'll just overdo these kind of things. There you go. So I've done that. If you notice, everything is done to here, to the main layer. So say I do some other stuff, and the idea is that I keep doing everything to one layer, and I can't go back and adjust any of those things to fix it or change it any way, shape, or form, other than going into history and going back to the beginning, or as we talked about with the history brush, you can take some of the stuff away, but you can't completely, it's not the ideal way to go all the way back to the beginning or to adjust a single thing.
And
So
if you save that photo as a JPEG, the changes are permanent.
What's that again? I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm having trouble hearing you tonight.
If you save that file, the changes are permanent.
Right.
If you save it as the same name that it is.
Save it as same name.
Absolutely. So if I would do a Control S or Command S, which is a save button, or just go over here and say File and Save, then I've changed my original image in its original place wherever I opened it from, and it's a permanent change. You can't do anything about it. That's the reason we use layers. So if we take that back using history, I went back to the beginning, and let me go ahead and just close that. and now we'll do some adjustments using layers, and you can see how you can go back and forth and change those layers, and then you can save it as in layers, as we've done in the past. And then anytime you open it back up at that point, you can go back in and readjust layers again. So that's the reason we do that. So adjustment layers are done with the half and half circle down here. And if you click on that, you can see you have a bunch of different versions of adjustment layers that you can do. So tonight we're going to look at levels, brightness, contrast, and we'll just kind of go through some of these here. So let's start out with the levels adjustment layer. You see when I did that, it added a layer. It's called levels 1. It gives me my place here to work with my levels. So now I can make adjustments to my picture. Let's bring our highlights down a little bit. Take our blacks up a little bit, maybe midtones a little bit lighter, whatever. You know, you're going to make some adjustments. Okay, I've done that. You can close that. I made some adjustments there. If we go in and do another layer of, say, brightness and contrast, so now I have levels, now I have another layer called brightness and contrast, and I can make some adjustments here. Let's add a little contrast to it. Take the brightness down just a little bit, whatever. We make adjustments. So now I have layers here. I can shut one of the layers off. I can shut both of the layers off. I can go back in to my levels layer and readjust that if I don't like what it looks like. I can shut the one layer off and just go back to my levels layer, make adjustments there. So that allows you to do multiple adjustments to the same layer over and over again until you get your picture the way you want it. Questions or comments? You guys are awful quiet tonight. Let's say I screwed a layer completely up and I don't like it and I have 30 other layers on top of here. I can always just go in and take that one layer and throw it away. And then all my other layers would be there. So let's do a brightness and contrast on there, and we'll just make some adjustments there. Let's do another one, a hue and saturation. Saturate the colors just a little bit. And if I don't like that hue and or the brightness and contrast, I can always go in and just grab it, throw it away. And it removes that and leaves your other layers there. So it gives you a really kind of a unlimited amount of working on a picture layer by layer, and you can always go back and change that layer, adjust that layer. And as long as you leave those layers like that, you always have that ability to do that. Any comments or insight from anybody?
Not too long ago, we were creating a cartoon or a comic book looking image. And I modified what I did a little bit, but a good place, very similar to that, it's very intense when you're looking for filters and you're trying them and they don't produce what you want. So you have to dump it, try another one, or sometimes even a combination of them work together. So I think that in the process of using the filter menu, it's very intense. It's very intense to use the filters to see the effect, decide that's the effect you want, and then you can hang on to that layer, and then you can move on by adding another layer and working with the filters in that layer. Intense is a key word.
Very good. So, and what Rex is saying is at any point, so I've made some levels adjustment, I made a hue and saturation adjustment. I can add a layer with the box down here with a plus in it, create new layer, put a layer on top of that, and then I can adjust that layer by using filters and things like that on that particular layer.
Mm-hmm.
which if you guys, the cartoon one was one that we used that with, where we added a layer and then we did, I do believe we did a render, or no, it wasn't a render. I kind of forget, filter gallery.
It came out sort of like a
Oh.
wall painting kind of finish to it.
Yeah. But anyhow, so working in layers is important in Photoshop. And there's a lot to do with layers. There's all kind of different blending modes of layers, which we'll get into later on. Probably the next time we're going to go into that part of the layer part. Blending modes do different things to the layers and cause it to do different things to what's below it. Let's see if we can do something goofy with that. So I added a layer on top of this hue and saturation and levels and changed the blending mode to overlay, or you can change it to different things, and it changes the way that works below it. And then you could change the opacity of that layer and only use some of that. There's really an unlimited amount of stuff that you can do with layers. So understanding layers and going through them and learning them and spending time with layers is extremely important with Photoshop. Questions or comments, please?
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
It made me think of in Lightroom, when you have your list of what you've done to your photo on the left, is there some way to go in there and, like, if you made a change like 5 steps back, can you delete something in Lightroom the way you're deleting it in Photoshop? You took the layer and dropped it down and eliminated it, but like in Lightroom, is there some way that I could undo something without going through all the steps in the history? The way I had been doing it, I would go up into edit and say, you know, like undo the last thing I did. But if there was something I wanted to undo that was like 4 steps earlier.
No, in Lightroom, if you can go back 4 steps, but you lose the 3 steps ahead of that as well.
Yeah, that's what
So
I
if you go into
thought.
like your history and go back and go, I want to go back to the hue and saturation, get rid of that. Anything above that from in the history panel would go away as well. Where in Photoshop, because you've done it as a layer, you can go back and just get rid of that layer altogether, and it leaves everything else there, still there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure if I was missing something. Okay,
That's something that I'm wondering why the engineers don't put something like that in Lightroom.
Well,
allow you to pull out. I noticed you have a stack of things you've done, and you reach into the stack and you pull out the 1 or 2 or 3 you don't like, and everything else above or below it stays. You know, is that difficult? Maybe, you know, I would think that a software engineer might be able, well, they did it with Photoshop, but you'd have to change some formula, some algorithm in Lightroom.
The way I've got a way around that in Lightroom is by using the snapshots.
Yeah.
And then using virtual copies of the picture. So as I do something and then I make a virtual copy and do something else and kind of see which one I like better. There's ways around it, but it's not as simple as in Photoshop, just going in and grabbing and throwing away your layer.
Yeah,
the issue may be how Lightroom stores the information versus Photoshop. once you make a change, you go to the next layer, you may think it's a layer, but it all may be stored as one thing. In Lightroom, you can't go back and isolate what that one move was, because a lot of times when you do a move, like if you're shading something, it's multiple keystrokes, so it wouldn't have all of them recorded together.
Correct.
I think the hard work way would be to, if you're pretty close to satisfied with what you have, but you want to make some other changes, but you don't want to lose what you have, that you just go ahead and save it as one image and then create it again, and then go from there and see which one of the two works out the best. And then you just eliminate the one you don't like in Lightroom.
Right.
Right, that's an idea.
Yeah, it's one of the downfalls of Lightroom is that it doesn't use layers, or it doesn't store stuff in a way of being able to go in and do that, make those adjustments or change things and not screw up everything else that you've done. But unfortunately, that's the way it is for now. Working in Photoshop in the layers is the positive thing of Photoshop, but you have to learn quite a bit more to run Photoshop. It's a little bit more intuitive,
Yeah, it's
a little bit less intuitive and more intense.
A lot more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lightroom's a lot easier.
So we was
Lightroom's a lot more intuitive for a photographer too, I think, than Photoshop. If I know, I can see a picture and say that's off a stop, I go and move the slider over a stop, I'm good. It's a lot easier than full of different levels in Photoshop. At least I think it is.
You're right, it is. And you have to remember that Photoshop, even though it's named Photoshop, was not designed from the beginning as a photo program. It was designed as a design program.
Right.
It was, and that's what it's today is still used used for intensively for graphic design type stuff. So the multiple layers and the text and all that kind of stuff, that's all done in Photoshop for the most part. And that's what the program was designed for. Now, we as photographers have picked and choose what we like out of it to use it for photography. And it works well, but it is a little bit more step intensive, I should say, to get to a final point. Just like you just said, you get in there, you go into Lightroom and you move the couple sliders around and you've got a photo that's adjusted and you're ready to go. Where in Photoshop, there's a lot more steps to get to that point. But it's nice to have an understanding how things work in Photoshop, because there is sometimes Lightroom won't do the trick, and you got to move over to Photoshop to get something done.
Yeah. A reminder in case you didn't get it, probably you all got it, but Photoshop had another update today. I got a notification today to update.
I did not update today, so
I didn't either. I didn't see that.
Yeah. Well, I have to allow for my own shortcomings. This could be one where I haven't used it in a while, and it was probably telling me some time ago that it needed an update. I used it, and, so I finally put in my update. But I have.
No, there's an update available.
I've been going. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dennis. Go ahead.
I see in my system it's an update available. I did not see that.
I stand corrected. Okay.
No,
Because I was focused on Lightroom. I'm going right from the scanner to Lightroom. I'm not doing anything in Photoshop. It's just pulling them in. I have it set to move. So what it does is it takes them off my laptop so that it saves space, and it adds them to a 5 terabyte external drive. Otherwise, it chokes up really fast. So there is one. Good. I got that right.
Brian, can you go over how to reduce the instructions in Photoshop to be just for photographers? I think you did that last time we were in a meeting.
Sure.
And I've lost it already.
Okay, so you mean to reduce the tools down to the more of the photographer version?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, I get overwhelmed with all the possibilities with full Photoshop. So if I do use it, I want to just minimize some of the instructions, and I'd like to know how to do that.
Okay. So, well, first, let me just put it back to what would be normal. So this would be normal, which is what's called essentials. So if you just open Photoshop up for the very first time, it will open up to an essentials palette, an essentials palette of tools, which is a lot of stuff. And some of this stuff here I have on the left-hand side of my screen will be split. You'll have tools on one side and your layers and stuff like that on the other side. I move them all to one side. That's just a personal preference. But if you go to Windows, there's a window tab atop, and there's a workspace. And there you can pick different workspaces that are designed more specifically for what it is you may be doing. So Essentials is default. There's a 3D workspace, graphic and web, motion, painting, and photography. So if you click on the photography one, then it changes your toolbars and it changes your stuff over here to be more lined up towards what you might be doing in photography. Now, as Margie pointed out, there's a couple things that she uses all the time, like the paint bucket, that it disappears from in here. And you have to find that with these three little buttons right there. And there's a drop-down menu, and there's all the tools that it disappears are in here. You just have to go find them instead of them being under the tools, they've moved them to the under here part.
Thank you very much. So it's very simple, just going up to Windows and you find the drop down and go to photography.
Yep. So it's the workspace under Windows.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then you can turn different things on as well. You can see how these check marks are next to things. Those things are turned on. If I click on something, it'll open that up for me. Good question, though. Anybody else with questions?
Photography mode work with layers also?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah, that's what we're working in right now is the photography mode.
Are you gonna get into with the add new layer, which in the full Photoshop, I'm not really sure where it is, but you can pick layer from copy, background copy, new layer, all different types. Are you gonna go over what each different one does and why they're different?
Yes. I will have to find out where that's at in Photoshop because it's a little different in here.
Okay, because I only use elements, but
okay.
That's the one thing with layers that has always confused me. No matter which one I pick, it's not the right one.
Okay.
But I never really know what I'm doing. I make it work somehow in the end, but.
So when you're adding a new layer as far as, give me a little bit more background as to what it is you're doing so I understand what's going on.
If you've got something up as the background, and it's one of the top ones in elements across the top, not okay. It's not in any of the banks or anything. And it's just to add a new layer. I think it's the layer menu. Yes, new, and then layer from background or layer via copy.
Okay.
Or just layer.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. We can go over those. They're actually, the layer via copy is what we normally do. So when you open a picture in Photoshop, and I always say to make a copy of that layer, which we say by doing Control or Command J to make a copy. So there you see I have layer 1 now. And that is the same as going in the layer new, layer via copy. So basically it's just making a copy of the layer that you have. And you can do that at any step in the process. So if you've got, if you've done a couple things, you've combined a couple things and you're working on whatever layer it is, layer 28, you can do a Control or Command J and it'll make a copy of that particular layer, the layer right below it. the other versions in there, which would be, let me start over here and go back to the beginning and layer, new layer, just a plain new layer brings up this little screen here in Photoshop and asks you what to do. What do you want to name it? Do you want to do you want to put a color in it? What kind of mode do you want it to be? Opacity and stuff like that. So if I just do this and say no color in like that, you see that it builds just a blank layer, which, by the way, is the same thing as hitting the square with a plus inside of it. It builds a blank layer. Let me throw those two away, and we'll go back up there again. New layer from background. It's going to say, what do you want to name that layer? We'll just go ahead and leave it at layer 0, color none, and I'm going to put that in there. And it takes the background layer and makes it a layer 0, which, by the way, is the same as hitting this little unlock button. And it unlocks that layer so that you can work on it. Your very bottom layer in Photoshop, you can't do anything to it. You have to work above that. This allows you to do anything you want to that very bottom layer as well. So if I wanted to move that layer halfway across like that, you can do that. If you don't have the layer locked, you can't do that. See? If I tried to move it, it says you can't do that. You have to convert it to a normal layer, and then it'll allow me to move it. And let's go back in here and let's see, what was the other one? You can do a layer group, which grouping is, we've done that in a couple of the demonstrations, but basically you take a couple layers and say you've done 3 layers and those are for the adjustment for the sky. You can group those 3 together into and this comes in handy. It doesn't really matter a whole lot as far as if you're doing only 4 or 5 layers and that's all you've got in your layer list. When you get into that photograph that has 50 layers, then it's nice to group some stuff together. You'll just pick your different layers out and name them sky and make a group. And basically it just puts them in a folder. That way, you know, if you want to go back and work on just the sky, you can open that folder up and work on those layers that had to do with the sky. Artboard, I do not know, so I would have to do a little research on artboard and artboard from layers. Those two I'm not aware of. Does that answer some of the questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So when you start a photograph in Photoshop, one of the best habits to get into is always make a copy of that base layer with that Control or Command J and get a layer 1, and then you're working on from there up. And then your background is always there. That way, if any point, you can always just go back and delete everything and start over again. But it's nice to start with a layer always from the beginning. Basically, any video I've ever watched says to do that, so that's what we do.
You really mean you delete everything but the base layer?
Right. If I had like 30 layers on here and I wasn't happy, I could come, highlight the top one and highlight layer 1 and then drag them to the garbage bin and start over with just the background again. You're muted, Gaylor.
Can you delete the background layer though?
Well, if you delete the background layer, then you won't have anything left to work on.
That's what I was asking. If you inadvertently do that, you're out of luck.
Well, it won't let you, as you can see. So if your background layer is typically locked, so you'll see a little lock there. So you can't throw that away. And even if it's not locked, so if I unlock that and it's just a regular layer, and if I take it, it's the very last thing on there and try to throw it away, it tells me no.
Okay.
You can close the picture, of course, and that gets rid of everything, but you can't delete that bottom layer.
Right. That's what I was hoping.
This is just a wild thought, okay? Bear with. If you were to start your project and then you created another group with some of what you think you might use, and then you created a third group, and you've decided, I want group 1 and group 3, there is probably the closest thing I can think of to, say, taking group 2 and deleting it. I mean, do you see what I'm saying about being able to do work and then do some more work and then do some more, and then somewhere along the way after 4 or 5, just pick out 2 and 3 or 4, whatever you want, and pull those together. Just an idea.
Right, or if you had stuff in groups, so in groups and one of the groups you don't want, you can always just turn it off with the little eye. Well, I don't have anything in here, but let's do.
Right, I got it, yeah. If you had, say, 4 of them.
Right.
You could pull one out.
So if I took those 2 layers and grouped it, you can see how that becomes a group. And then I can do, let's do another layer here. And let's do a.
That's another thing. If you were in group 2 or 4 or 6, and you decided to turn off one of the layers in that group, is that, if you went and saved it with that turned off, does that show up anyway, or is that done?
No, it's well, if you save it as a PSD, it'll stay exactly the same way. But if you export it as a JPEG with that group turned off, it'll come out with that group turned off as your JPEG.
Huh? Okay.
So if you had 10 groups in here and you turn 4 of them off, whatever you have showing on the screen is what you would export as a JPEG. So what you said there, if you had seveal groups, and say we did a whole bunch of work to the sky, we did work to the sand, and we worked on here, and those are all groups. And then we went, well, I really like that sky the way it was originally. You could turn off the sky group. Say that was the sky group, and you went back to, and you just done away with that. You can turn it off.
Nice. Yeah.
And instead of deleting it, just leave it turned off. That way, if you save your PSD with all your groups in it, you come back to it tomorrow and went, you know what, let's see what it looks like with that sky back in here. We could just open it back up from the PSD and turn the sky on and look at it again.
Okay, so it's a workaround, but there is a way, at least for a particular project.
Right.
But just like Lightroom, you can't remove something from one of the groups without removing the whole group. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. So if I open this group up, so I have group 1 that has a brightness and it has a hue and saturation. I can take that brightness and throw it away and take that out of the group.
Very good. Very good. Like it.
And then if I'm in that group, I can add another layer. Let's add a levels layer. And you can see now how that I had the group 1 highlighted. When I added the levels layer, it went into that group and it stays in that group then. I can shut it off, shut the other one off, open that up. I can work in there. I can add layers in there. So your groups are nice. Like I said, if you've done a whole bunch of layers to get your sky the way you want it, then take those layers, highlight them all, hit Control or Command G, that groups those together, and just rename that sky. Like so. And then when you come back down the road, oh, that's my group of sky stuff. So if I want to readjust the sky, I can always come back in here and make adjustments. And just click on one of the layers.
Looks like you'll have a second group there.
Ooh, that's the wrong thing. There it is. And then it opens up and you can readjust that level. So I made adjustments to those levels. I change them in that group.
I'm liking Photoshop more and more.
Good.
Despite all this complexity.
Now, as I was showing earlier, you can start an adjustment layer. So right now I don't have anything highlighted. If I do another adjustment layer of, let's say, exposure, you'll see how that comes up as a layer above everything. So if I make an adjustment here, it adjusts everything that I'm seeing already. Or if you use this little button right here, which is it affects the layer below. So if I click on this, what it does is it links it to group 2. So now if I make adjustments there, it's only adjusting what was in group 2, which obviously there was nothing in group 2 that exposure would be changing, because group 2 is just the vibrance and the levels. So you see there's no change there. When I don't have that connected, then I'm adjusting the whole photograph altogether. And obviously that's horrible.
Process that generates work products, that's a waterfall.
So that's another thing, and which we'll explore that more in the future when we get into more of these this layer information. And also, let's go. I got another image here. This is. I'm just going to grab this image. I have my move tool, which is the letter V. Do like they showed in the video. I'm going to take it and drag it back over here and drop it on there. Oops, I forgot to hold the shift key there. When you drag a layer from one layer to the other, if you hold the shift key down, it will drop it directly in the middle and fill in exactly the way it's supposed to be. So now I have a layer. I have my couple things that I made adjustments to my background, and I have a new layer on top of this. Let's explore some blending modes just to get an idea of what they do. So if I go into a darken, see what it did? It starts bringing the information in from one to the other. Actually, it's pretty neat to put sand in the steps there.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Here is what's called a multiply. And you have to just get in here and kind of fool around with these different ones to see what they do as you go along. Lighten, screen, color dodge, linear dodge add. So there's a bunch of different ones in here that do different things. There's an overlay, soft light, hard light. And each of these become important when you start doing compositions and not compositions. What's the word I'm looking for, guys?
Composites.
Composites, that's it. When you start compositing and putting layers together, that's where your blending modes come into effect a lot. So keep that in mind. We'll go over them more in the future. You can also, of course, adjust your just straight opacity of one layer to the other. And then you can start working with mask and masking stuff in, like they showed in the video, to get things to combine together. But that's just a quick overview of that. We'll get more into that in the future. Questions, comments? Anybody? Anything? All right, well, that was actually pretty much what I wanted to cover tonight. I just wanted to get into the beginning of that. I thought it would take a little longer than it did. So any questions or anything you want me to look forward to, anything you want me to put in my notes that you want me to cover in the future?
Probably nobody else is having this problem, but I have a little bit of trouble trying to get my files ready to send to a printer.
Okay.
And do you prefer to size things in Photoshop, or do you like just keeping them in Lightroom and getting them ready for the printer there? Do you have a preference?
When I'm sending to a printer, me personally, and I'm sure everyone does different things, but me personally, I take it from Lightroom to Photoshop and I export from Photoshop for the printer.
So do I. Resize in Photoshop.
Size in Photoshop?
Yep.
Yeah. I like the way you can do it through Lightroom, but I like the way Photoshop does it better.
Yeah, so do I.
Photoshop is, I think, more, I can't think of the word I'm trying to use, but I like the way Photoshop does it. I think it works better, and I think it's more consistent when you export from Photoshop. So I do, and that is even if I've done all of my corrections in Lightroom, I still will send it to Photoshop for the export for my printer.
Well, what do you export it as, a JPEG then?
It depends on where I'm sending it. Most printers are asking you for a JPEG at a certain, if you go to their website or go to their thing, they're going to tell you what they want. They want a JPEG at maximum at 300 DPI or whatever it is that they're asking for, and whatever color profile they're asking for, and then you ship it to them that way.
Yeah, Miller's is a totally professional lab, and they definitely want JPEGs. I accidentally sent a TIFF to them one time. I wasn't watching. And they sent back, we prefer that you send a JPEG. So they actually came back and said, hey, I don't want this, basically, is what they said. I want a JPEG. So they were clear about that. And I resent.
So Suzanne, let's say this picture was finished and I was ready to export it, and obviously it's not finished, it looks horrible, but I would come into Photoshop and crop it the way I want, and at the DPI that I want for the picture that I'm doing. So we'll say 14 by 11 at 300. And you can see how it crops out a little bit because of your ratio, but we'll say that's where I wanted it, and I crop it out. My picture is now at 14 by 11 at 300 DPI. And I would export that out then. I would file, save as, and I'm going to save it to my computer. And in this case, I want to save it as a JPEG. And it's telling me where I want to put it. And ICC profile was a display P3, which you can adjust or turn it on or turn it off. And then I would save it, and my picture would be ready to go to my printer. That profile is the wrong printer, I can tell you that much, or the wrong profile. But you would adjust that under, help me out. I forget where you do that at, guys.
Color settings. Go back one. Down the bottom. Is it in there?
Oh, you missed.
Uh,
RGB. There's your choices.
Color management policies, workspace. It's in sRGB.
Everything except for that.
What's that?
Everything except for the ICC thing.
Yeah. I forget. It's been a while since I did this. I'll have to look that up. Because that is not where it's at, I don't think.
Hello? Hey.
Did you ever try to use to print a border so you could avoid cropping and in other words, like if I have an image and I like it exactly the way it is, but I wanted it to be 8 by 10, but could I put a border around it and maybe force it to the next size so that I can get the entire image printed without cropping any of it. And sometimes I struggle with that. So you could send it to the printer with the border that would bring it up to the size that you wanted it printed, but still maintain the integrity of the photo without having to lose any of it.
Sure. So I can actually show you that right now. If you look at this image,
That's a big one.
yeah, let's do this. Let's crop that and delete this and delete this. Let's see what size that is. Image size. So it's actually a 13 by 10 at 300 DPI. That's the actual image of the size of the image, we'll say. And you don't want to crop any of that off, but you want it to be an 11 by 14 picture. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be a good example.
Well, there's a couple ways of doing that, but one of the easy ways to do it that I like to do is just do a Control N or Command N, and I'm going to tell it I want a custom size new file. So my new file is going to be what do we say? That one's going to be 14 wide by 11 at 300 DPI. And I'm just going to tell it to create that. And that gives me a blank page. I can go over and grab my image. And if I hold my Shift key down when I let go of it, it puts it directly in a center and puts my border around there. So now when I send that picture out, the picture itself is an 11 by 14. My picture hasn't changed in size, and the border's around the picture already.
That's really neat. Okay.
And actually, John does this a lot. John Wacklow, he's talked about his pictures are a certain size, but he always prints them on a bigger sheet of paper.
Yeah.
So that the bigger sheet of paper fits in the frame size.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it right there. And then you would have your matte cut to fit the picture, or you could have your matte cut to leave the border on there, however you want to do it. But this way you can do and keep all of your picture in your picture by doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, you know. So I hate cropping out stuff just to get it to fit, you know, a conventional size.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll give that a shot.
How did you make that white background layer again? You just
Oh, just a controller command N, or for a new page is what I'm doing.
okay.
So you could go under File and New, Control N. That brings up your screen as to what you want to do. I'm going to do a custom size, and then I set it for the size I want my paper to be, 11 by 14 at 300. You just tell it to create it, and there's your white background.
Then you drag the other picture on top and center it.
Then I just grab the picture.
Okay. Okay.
Drag it over, and when you drop it, make sure you're holding the Shift key down.
Right.
When you let go, and that'll center it on the page.
Okay. Thank you for doing that again. I apologize for missing it the first time.
That's not a problem. Yeah, that's what we're here for. I'm gonna close that. I don't want to save anything. On this one here, I went ahead and flattened that. I'm gonna try the save as again and see what happens here. There it came up with the right profile. Let me see what happens. I change this to a JPEG. Yeah. So it came up with an sRGB profile that time, which is this ICC profile. And the reason it didn't do it the last time is because it was still in layers. And I went to send it out as a JPEG. This time I flattened the image, so it was just a single layer, and then I sent it out as a JPEG, and it keeps the right profile then for us. So that answers that question. Good questions, guys. Anything else? Anybody at all?
I will get in and out of this meeting. I'll get.
Oh, there's a puppy.
Yep.
All right, so to recap, when we open a picture up, open it up as whatever into Photoshop. Start out by making a copy of that layer with a Control or Command J so that we work with the layers above that. And then when we do adjustments, instead of just doing an adjustment, like going under image adjustment and something, do it as a layer adjustment. And you can do that under this palette that opens up. It has adjustments, channels, and paths. If you go to the adjustments and you just click on one of these, it'll automatically turn it into a layer adjustment. Or you can do it down at the bottom by clicking on the half circle, or the circle that's half full, and picking which one you want to do from there. So up here, if I do a brightness and contrast, you see that it adds it as a layer, and we can work on it. And that way we can go back and group those things and delete them and change them at any point, and it makes it easier to make adjustments later on down the road. Okay. Any other questions or anything from anybody?
Could I ask a really stupid question?
You know what the answer to that is? There is no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah, well, it might be, but like after and this will go back to Lightroom, but after I'm done working on my photo and say I say I have a photo that's 25 megabytes and I'm going to size it for printing, and I end up with something that's like about 8 by 10. So I'm going to lose pixels when I resize that all the time. I'm not losing quality, even though I haven't cropped it. I've just changed the size, you know, to get it ready for printing.
So you've changed it. Well, in Lightroom is non-destructive. So even though you've changed the size, you don't hurt anything. And in Lightroom, you can always go back and just delete that part that you changed the size, and you're back to your normal, whatever you started at.
Yeah, but I mean, like what I noticed, I think even in Photoshop, I was just trying to fool around, saving my changing from, you know, the raw file to the JPEG or whatever. I noticed when in Lightroom, when I would export the file full size and change it to JPEG, I would end up like with maybe a 25 megabit file.
Yes.
But whenever I would try to be specific about the size, for like make it 8 by 10 or whatever, I lost a lot of my file size went from like a 25 megabyte file down to 10.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, let's see here, this picture. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. Let me go back here. Sorry. Okay. So get this out of the way. All right, you guys see Photoshop, right?
Right.
Okay. So if we go back to this picture, which is one that I opened up, I haven't done anything to that. And if we look at the image size, so under image and image size, we see that that picture is 56 inches by 42 inches at 72 dpi. Okay. And the image size is 34.9 megs. All right. So if I just would resize it here, it would keep that stuff the same because it's locked. So if I change this to a 300, and I change, you see it went to 605 megs, and I change this to 10 to 7.5, it automatically lowers the size of the picture
Okay.
because I'm using a smaller picture
Yeah.
than the original picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, even though you're really not cropping it, you're just,
Right. In this particular situation, I'm not
Resizing it.
cropping it. I'm just changing the size of it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But if I go in and crop this picture, so let's crop it. Let's crop it to a 14 by, well, now let's go, I'm sorry. You were talking 8 by 10 at 8. And I crop it. Sorry. We look down here at the bottom, in the bottom of this part of the screen, it says dock. The size is 34.9 meg. That's what we've seen in the image size. So now if I crop it, you see my size went down because I've cut information off of the picture. Okay. So it's automatically going to get to be a smaller picture. Now, when I save that as a JPEG is a compression file. So it's going to take the information and compress it into a smaller file so that you can use that as an upload to your printer or to Facebook or wherever it is you're going with your picture. So the JPEG is a compression of that file. Now this is the JPEG to start with. And now if I save it again as a crop JPEG, it's going to be a smaller file than the original file.
Smaller. Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at, I'm trying to make sure that I save the file in the best, at the best quality I can. You know, when I go from my raw file to my JPEG for the printer, I just wanted to make sure that I was doing everything and maintained.
Right. So the best quality that you can for the printer is what the printer told you to send it to them as.
Yeah, that's
If
what
they
I'm.
tell you to send it as a JPEG format at 300 DPI, that's the best quality that you can save it for them.
Okay.
But what you want to do is not get into the habit of reopening and saving that same picture again. Always go
Right.
back to your PSD file with your layers in it and send that file out. That way you're always going back. A PSD is an uncompressed file. You don't lose any information in a PSD file.
Mhm.
And then if you
Okay.
say you send it to White House Custom Color and they ask it for 300 DPI, and then you send it to MPix and they want it at 320 DPI, you're going to save that as two different pictures from the original file that you were working on.
Yeah, I saw you can go up like what, all the way up to 800 DPI. What
Well,
would
you can go a long ways, but if you're sending it to the printer, oversizing it isn't going to do any good.
Yeah.
Because they're going to, that's the reason they tell you send it to me at 300 DPI, because that's what their printers is designed to work with, is a 300 DPI file. And some of them will tell you to send it to them at Rex. You can confirm, but I think one of the other numbers was like 160 or 180 DPI that they used to ask for.
Yeah, 270.
270 is another one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
270 was the early one. Mhm.
So it's a matter of what they're asking for, and that's how you want to send it to them. Sending it to them in a bigger file doesn't do you any good. It isn't going to print any better because they're only going to use 300 DPI out of that anyhow.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any questions from anyone else?
Yeah, correction, that was not 270, 240.
Yeah.
240
240 was one I remember.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys, let me, if there's no other questions in Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and get out of that and go back to normal. It's hot in my house. I'm sweating.
What's the deal using for an image here? This Titan. Is that a computer?
I do believe that's a computer that he was talking about building. That's like tremendously expensive.
It's only about $9,000.
Oh, that's nothing. Should have a couple.
Yeah, and the Titan RTX video card is going to be well, not obsolete, but out of date in about 3 weeks. NVIDIA's releasing a new line of cards.
And DL, what do you do with this once it's done?
I'm handing it off to our aerial team, and they're doing photogrammetry. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but basically they're taking thousands of images of, say, a rock face or a cliff or something like that, and they're stitching all that together into a 3D object that they can look at from any angle.
Oh.
They'll take that and they may fly it this month and then fly it in about 2 months and fly 2 months after that and look at how the rock face has changed. So it helps them predict landslides and stuff like that. It also allows them to, instead of having people climb the rock face to look at it, they can just sit at a computer and look at this and figure out how they're going to fix it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Right now, I think it's taking them 12 to 16 hours to process. This should cut that in half.
So they can study the rocks creep,
Yeah.
how much it moved.
Come a long way from the spinning discs that an entire house-sized computer wouldn't be able to do that same processing.
Yeah.
True. Well, I used to do 3D animation back in the 90s, and I look at what they're doing, and I'm just like, I'm blown away all the time. It's like if I built a 3D model that had a few hundred points, that was a dense model. They're building models that have tens of millions of points.
Yeah. Yes.
And the funny thing is, they're not touching any of it. They're just loading it into a program that analyzes all this stuff and stitches it all together. It's amazing.
Well,
Well, guys, I can tell you that several years ago, I worked with a guy that, just as we're talking about computers, but several years ago, I worked with a guy that made videos. And he did videos in 1080p, which at the time was the best that you could do. And they were normally about a 15-minute long video. And he used a MacBook, I'm sorry, not a MacBook, a Mac Pro at the time, which at the time was a $8,000 computer, I think, the top of the line, best of the best. And when we would render that video, when it was finished, and render it through Adobe Premiere Pro to get it to a point where we could send it or upload it or burn it to a DVD or something, we would normally hit render, and then that was our time to go to lunch or dinner or go home for the night and come back the next morning and hope that it was done.
Yeah.
It would be hours and hours to do that. And now with the computer that I'm using right now, I've been messing around with some videos. My videos are about 6 minutes long in 4K, which is what about DL? You can correct me, but maybe about twice as much information as a 1080p.
Four times.
4 times as much information. And my 5 to 6 minute videos, 7-minute videos will render in about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's just on my little laptop that, that I bought that probably is, well, I know is outdated already and could use an update. So,
well, I don't think that's a stretch in terms. If you have an i5 or i7 that's 4 or 5 years old, it'll pretty much do anything you really want it to do. Well, some stuff in Photoshop might be taxing, but I was just having this conversation with another friend of mine. He's trying to figure out what he's going to get his parents. I have to get a Chromebook for that. You don't need anything real powerful. But out of date, yeah, your computer's not out of date, not even close.
Yeah.
So DL, what do you think of these Apple new processors going away from Intel?
It's probably going to take them 2 to 3 years to actually get away completely. Next year they're going to have something out to on Intel processors. It's them trying to control their whole ecosystem.
Yeah, sure.
And it makes sense for what they do. We'll never ever be able to compare what Apple, an Apple computer to a PC ever again, because the architecture is now going to be completely different.
Yeah.
We can say that the Apple programs run what they're doing this fast. The PC programs run what they're doing this fast. That's about it. It's not a bad thing what they're doing, but it just makes it harder for us as a consumers to actually say whether they're doing something that's actually good, better, or amazing. Because there's nothing to compare it to.
Is it getting back more to the way stuff was before the 10, etc. OS came out? Like back with the Apple 9 and 8 level stuff? Because you could change how it used the memory in those, which got lost with 10 and up.
Well, the good thing that they can do is now that they're wrapping their hands around their whole ecosystem, they can control a lot more, and they can make changes specifically to specifically the way they need it to be to make things work better. So in that respect, it's great for Apple. However, I don't know about the rest of us.
Yeah.
I have a question about institutions like the U.S. government, schools, counties, states, DC. What are they going to buy into in order to stay on top?
It'll come down to the people who are making the purchasing decisions, what they think is best for,
Contractors probably using the best system for designing up their latest parts, technology, things like that.
Yeah.
I've never seen an Apple anything in a government office. Ever.
Yeah, certainly not very many.
Simply because they can get the PCs for less money than they can get the Apple products. And
well,
security are usually running Linux anyways, which is going to be all PC based.
Well, I guess what I would be looking at is there's a term that's used like sole source contract that one company might have simply because nobody has the equipment like they have to design it up. So they can almost name their contract price. If the purchaser wants to have the very best parts. My brother-in-law was president of the PDS in Irwin, and they make parts for helicopters and the V-22. And they're unique engine chassis pieces. And I'm not sure how they incorporate computers to do that kind of thing, but just in the interest of research and improvement, and having a system like you have on the screen here, capable of outperforming the design output from a PC-based system, says, hey, that's what I want. So let's get the money and buy that and use that in order to get ahead of the competition where there is competition.
Yeah, but also you have to consider who writes the software that they use and what that was written to run on.
Yeah, what do they know? Yeah.
Right. Because like I can't take I'm trying to think of Apple's version of Premiere, iMovie or something like that. I can't run that on a PC. So
Yeah.
if you were doing videos in iMovie, you know that product really well, nothing else is going to work for you except for an Apple product.
Mm-hmm. Just a thought. There's like the divide increases. You know, the ship is further from the pier every second it's a little further away from it. The engineering, computer engineering and design, it's going to, there's, the book is called Exponential something, I forget, Carol's reading it, and talks exactly about these kinds of things. The exponential increases in discovery and in production and such. And this looks like the kind of machinery that is going to be competitive in getting it done. I mean, it's not just going to be used for movies or anything like that. This device can be used to figure orbits of planets we don't know about yet, something like that.
Yeah, those computers tend to be a little bigger than this stuff.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said those computers tend to be a little bigger than this. This
So,
is,
what? Okay,
yeah,
what just?
The image there, that the video card, the motherboard, and all that's about maybe 12 by 14 inches.
Oh, okay.
But the CPU itself is about, let's say, 2 by 3 inches, maybe 3.5 by 2.5. It's a pretty big chip compared to most of them. 34 threads.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a beast compared to something you would go into Best Buy and pick up.
All right, guys. Well, it's getting to be about 9 o'clock. Marty, I got the newsletter that you sent again. So I'll add my thing to that and get that sent out. So you guys can expect the newsletter in the next half an hour or so. I'll do that right now. And picnic wise, how many of you planning on attending the picnic on Saturday?
So
I'll be there.
You make it.
I'm not sure yet for myself.
Okay.
I can't make it. I have another commitment.
Okay.
I'll be by myself.
All right. So we got 4 or 5 people. I think Annie, well, I know Annie's going to be there. I'm pretty sure she requested off already. And I think Margie's coming to that as well. She's not on here anymore, but I think she's coming. So we'll have a few people there. Jim's coming as far as I know. I hope, because he's doing the scavenger hunt. So
I think Margie told me she wasn't coming.
she's not coming? Okay. Well,
Pavilion 2, right?
Yes.
Yep. So newsletter will come out in a little bit. We've got a picnic on Saturday. And then we'll be moving along from there. All right.
Let me put it this way for myself and Carol. Let's say the jury's still out, but it has to do with myself and my arthritis. Literally, that's what it has to do with. I have to be able to be mobile. And I'll know better later on how I'm doing.
I hope you feel better, Rex.
Yeah, we hope you get feeling better. We'd like to see you there. So.
Okay. Well, I'll do everything I can. Advil bottle is up there and full, so we'll see.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, and we'll talk to you guys on some of you on Saturday.
Very good. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Enjoy.
Good night.
Good night.
Night all.